I have owned my 2021 Kawasaki Versys 1000 SE-LT Plus for 1 year now. It has been a phenomenal bike that really fits the way that I ride and what I need. But is it perfect? Maybe not entirely, but it's pretty dang close. So let's take a look at the good and maybe the not so great features about this Versys 1000. Probably one of the biggest factors in me purchasing this bike is the engine. Kawasaki has a 1043cc inline 4-cylinder engine in this thing that they have been making for years. It is super refined, super smooth, and perfect for knocking out the miles on the highway for long road trips. Another great benefit of this bike is the luggage that comes with it. These 28-liter cases come stock on the Versys 1000. And I really like the way that it ties into the look of the bikes, it's color matched, and some great lines. It has plenty of storage, and you can even fit a full-sized helmet inside of one of these. When you take them off, you don't have any nasty looking frames. The look of the bike is really clean. Up until the 2018 model, the Kawasaki Versys 1000 was simply just a big Versys, big motor. In 2019, Kawasaki overhauled the Versys 1000 with a huge tech upgrade, making it one of the flagship models of Kawasaki. A lot of the additions are things that you now find standard on touring bikes and bigger bikes. Things like cruise control, which is a must-have for a touring bike and was a must-have for me if I'm going to start doing longer trips. Another great feature that I really appreciate as we get into the colder fall weather and winter months is the heated grips that come stock on this. It has 3 settings of a low, medium, and high, and it's very, very important for keeping your hands warm. Not only is it just comfort, but it's also a safety feature. When your fingers get cold, you start to lose that reaction time, and it could be dangerous. So make sure your hands stay warm if you're riding in winter. Another piece of technology that Team Green has added to this, the traction control, which is also becoming a very standard piece of equipment on big touring bikes, but is also trickling down to the middleweights. It's very important in monitoring the wheel speed, works in conjunction with the ABS to keep you safe and keep you upright. A great feature to have on this. Another nice thing that was definitely an upgrade for me is all LED lighting on this thing. No more changing little bulbs. And also, both of these headlights light up when the low beam. It doesn't have the winky headlights anymore. Yes! It has LED cornering lights, so as you lean the bike over into a turn, it has 3 lights that progressively light up to illuminate the corner. Another great feature about this bike, it has a fully electronic suspension. You can adjust the preload up here on the controls, which will adjust the rear shock to 3 settings: rider, rider with luggage, or rider and passenger with luggage. While the suspension was also introduced in 2019, in 2021, this also got the Showa Skyhook suspension technology added to it, which can be found on bikes like the Multistrada. So this is certainly moving this bike up into a premium category. And any bike that now has a throttle-by-wire has rider modes, and this bike is no exception. This is a great feature to adjust your ride to the conditions that you're in. This has 3 standard modes and 1 rider customizable mode. Sport mode will adjust the suspension settings. Road mode is your standard riding, cruising around. Rain mode will increase your traction control and will also reduce the throttle power input so that you're not going to get yourself in trouble in wet conditions. If you have a bike that's chain driven, you know how important a center stand is, right? This bike comes stock with a center stand. It has been such a game changer compared to what I did have when having to clean the chain. No more futzing around with a rear stand, trying to get it on the spools, working around the tail, anything like that. Now it's just so easy. You just pop it up, and now you can work on the rear wheel, clean the chain, replace the rear wheel, anything like that. It makes maintenance so much better. It's just a little add-on in the grand scheme of things, but it has a huge benefit. If you're ever going to be riding with a passenger, the Versys 1000 is an awesome option for 2-up. The passenger seat is so comfortable. Just ask my wife. That was one of the big selling points for me getting this bike, was because she thought the seat was comfortable. Compared to the Versys 650, her words were literally, "Oh, this is a better situation than what you've got." A nice big seat, very comfortable, plenty of legroom to the pegs, and you're not worrying about interfering with the side cases as well. The final big factor in this thing is just the comfort and ergonomics of this bike. As I mentioned before, I did have a Versys 650 prior to this, and this bike ergonomically is pretty much the same. It's an easy reach to the handlebars. My legs don't feel cramped even though I am 6'2", and you're in an upright seating position, and it's very comfortable for quite a few miles. While there are a lot of great features on this bike, it's not quite perfect. After owning it for a year, there are a few things that I could nitpick at and wish were a little bit better, and they're certainly not deal breakers for me, but it's probably important for any of you that are looking to buy this bike. So let's take a look at those things which I find to be a little bit lacking. While the passenger seat is certainly great, the rider's seat a little bit lacking for me. I wish it was a little bit softer. It certainly is softer than normal sport bikes, but I wish it was a little bit softer so that riding many, many miles was just a little bit easier. It's not bad, but it is a little thing that I don't like when doing a lot of miles. One thing that they did fix from the 650 though, is it's not sloped forward like it is on the 650 that tends to push your stuff into the tank. So that's certainly a plus. And again, it's not a bad seat, but I wish it was just a little bit softer. This is a heavy boy, coming in around 570 pounds. The weight of this bike can be a bit intimidating and a little bit of a hindrance, especially when you're rolling it in and out of the garage. Once you're at speed, the weight certainly goes away and it's not as noticeable, but it may factor into the riding style a little bit if you're not used to the weight. But that's something that I'm willing to accept given that I get a bigger engine, an inline 4, and just the bigger size that's more comfortable for me. Another thing I'm going to be nitpicky about is the cornering lights. Now, while they certainly are a positive and they are nice to have, I wish they were a little bit brighter or shown just a little bit wider. They're certainly great to have in areas that you're not familiar with, or if there's not enough ambient lighting around. They do help, but I think they could be a little bit better. We come back to the luggage for this next one. Again, these are great to have. They have great lines with the bike. The downside to having great lines with the bike that match that is that it creates an odd shape for storing things. While there is a lot of storage in this, 28 liters, you've got this crazy outline and things don't always Tetris in just like you want it. An aftermarket box that's much more angular with 90 degrees may be easier to fit stuff in, and this can be a little bit odd where you're tucking things into these odd corners. So it's not a deal breaker certainly, but it's just something to keep in mind that you do have to work in some odd shapes. But they do have these restraining straps in here that do help. Now the last thing about this bike isn't really a nitpick from my perspective, but it can be a big barrier for other people getting this bike, is the MSRP on it. This bike over the past couple years has had an MSRP of the upper $18,000, nearly $19,000. Now, it's probably justified with all the technology that is on this, with all the electronics, the size of the engine, the integrated storage, the center stand, everything like that. But it is still a hefty price tag, and it certainly puts it up there with other premium models. On my 4-month review video, a person commented that it's odd to think that Kawasaki is not considered premium. And I do want to clarify that I'm not saying that this bike is not premium. It certainly is. But I think there is a perception that Kawasaki's, Hondas, Yamaha, Suzuki, the big 4 Japanese, are just kind of your normal bikes. Whereas your European brands like Ducati, BMW, Triumph may be the more premium brands that command a higher price tag. And while that may be the perception, I do think this offering from Kawasaki is certainly a premium offering, which does command a premium price. Now, is it worth the $19,000? It could be, and I think it is in some cases. However, this bike is not for everyone. But it is for me, and fortunately I got a good deal on it. But I think this bike, with its price tag, certainly limits itself to the casual viewer. Also, this bike, compared to some of its competitors, tends to be on the lower power side. So that may be a little bit of a nitpick. If you look at bikes that this is in competition with or comparable bikes, the Yamaha Tracer 9 GT Plus, the Ducati Multistrada, both the V2 and maybe the V4, and BMW's S1000 XR. I think all of those bikes, while very comparable to this, all of those other bikes kind of lean more toward the sport of sport touring, whereas this is more of a casual cruiser touring bike with a little bit of sport. So this is certainly geared for just knocking out the miles and not ripping around a track, but I can attest that this thing handles itself perfectly up in the mountains when you're wanting to get a good lean on. So to wrap it up, the Kawasaki Versys is an awesome machine loaded with tech and plenty of power to knock out the miles, but it does have a price that goes along with that. However, I will say, if you are interested in this bike but a little worried about the price, you can usually find a few good deals for leftover model years or even the used market. Again, this bike is not for everybody. It is a big bike. It's a tall bike, it weighs a lot, but if it's something that you can handle, it is an awesome machine and I would highly recommend it. I don't plan on giving this bike up anytime soon. Hey, this video is not sponsored, but I do want to give a shout out to Cardo. I am a brand ambassador for them, so I do want to relay how great Cardo units have been for me. If you're in the market for a Bluetooth communicator for your helmet, whether you need something as simple as listening to music or getting directions from your phone, or all the way to the other end where you want to talk to 15 riders in a group ride while listening to music and getting directions, Cardo has you covered. Let me tell you, once I got the Pack Talk Edge, it was a game changer. I can't imagine riding without it. And if you use my promo code Ghostontwowheels at checkout, you'll get 10% off, or maybe a little bit more if they're having a sale. And yeah, I get a little kickback from that. But also with that, I plan on doing some giveaways or something like that later on. So check it out if you need a unit. cardosystems.com, promo code Ghostontwowheels. I appreciate y'all checking out the video and checking out this 1-year review of my Kawasaki Versys 1000. Please hit that like button and subscribe as I'm trying to grow this channel and do some cool things. Also, drop a comment below if you have one of these bikes or if you have a question about it. I'll be happy to answer it. Until then, ride safe and I'll see y'all on the next one. Later.